He found me in the rain the first time I saw him. I was crouched under the awning of a rundown gas station, soaking wet, cold to the bone, and invisible. People passed, some looked, most didn't. I had been living like that for nearly 6 months. No home, no ID, no one. Until he stopped. A sleek black car, windows tinted like secrets. It pulled into the lot and idled. I didn't look up, not at first. But the window rolled down. "You okay?" A deep, even voice, not unkind, not overly concerned. Just calm. I didn't answer. People ask things like that sometimes, and they rarely waited for the reply. But he did. He stepped out. Tall, dressed in all black. Not like a businessman. More like someone who is used to control. He offered me an umbrella. And for the first time in weeks, someone looked at me like I wasn't a stain. "What's your name?" I hesitated, then whispered, "Emma." "Emma," he repeated. "You need help?" I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. And sometimes, silence is loud enough. He brought me to his house. Not an apartment, not a shelter. A house, big, clean, quiet. He gave me clean clothes, food, a warm bed. And for the first time in months, I cried myself to sleep. Not from fear, but from the feeling of being safe. His name was Caleb. He didn't talk much, didn't ask too many questions. He just provided. Weeks passed. I started working around the house. Cleaning, cooking. Not because he asked, but because I wanted to do something. He never stopped me, he only watched. And sometimes his eyes lingered. Not in a cruel way, not lustful. Just curious. One morning I found a phone on the table. New, shiny, no note. But I knew it was for me. He started taking me places. Dinner, libraries, berries, bookstores. He said I reminded him of someone he once knew. Said I was different. He liked that I didn't ask for anything. "You're not like the others," he said one night. "You didn't come begging." I didn't answer. Because deep down, I had begged, just not out loud. One evening, he asked me to dinner. Not takeout, not with dishes between us. A real dinner. Candles. Wine. My reflection in a dress I didn't remember choosing. And afterward, he kissed me. Not rushed, not rough. Just real. And for the first time in years, I let someone in. I told myself I owed him everything. After all, he saved me. Didn't he? But I didn't know then. You can't see the cage when the bars are made of kindness. The rules I didn't know I agreed to it started with little things. A coat I liked, gone the next day. A friend request from someone I knew on the streets, deleted before I even saw it. The password on the phone he gave me changed overnight. Subtle, quiet, but constant. I never questioned it. How could I? He gave me everything. Warmth, food, shelter, safety. And after you've slept on sidewalks with your arms around your knees to stay warm, you learn not to question comfort. But the rules were there, unspoken, yet written in every glance, every pause in his voice. The first time I stepped out of the house without telling him, I came back to a cold dinner. No anger, no shouting, just a quiet kitchen and a single sentence. "I thought you were smarter than that." I apologized, felt stupid, ungrateful. He'd saved me. And I went wandering. What was I thinking? From then on, I asked before I left, every time. Sometimes he said yes. Sometimes he didn't answer. And when he didn't answer, I stayed. Because silence, I learned, was just another form of control. The clothes he bought me fit perfectly, but I never chose them. He picked every dress, every shade of lipstick, even the perfume I wore. "You look best like this," he'd say, and I believed him. Because when you've been invisible for so long, you cling to anyone who dares to look at you like you matter. But then came the favors. At first, harmless. Answering his phone when he was in the shower. Sending quick emails from his account. Smiling at his colleagues during parties. Laughing at things I didn't find funny. "Just be sweet," he'd say. "You're good at that." Later, they weren't so harmless. He once asked me to lie. Say I was his assistant when someone called about a business transaction. He said it didn't matter, said it was just a little legal mess. "You want to help, don't you?" he asked. And I said yes, because I did. I wanted to help. To be needed, to prove I wasn't just a charity case. That's how he made it feel. Like helping him was the only way to repay him. Like I owed him my loyalty. My silence, myself. There was a drawer in his office, always locked, always guarded. Once I asked what was inside. He didn't smile. "Don't ask about things that don't concern you." I laughed it off. But something twisted inside me that night. A feeling I hadn't felt since the streets. Fear. I began to notice the way his hands tightened around mine when I mentioned the past. The way his tone shifted when I brought up leaving the city. "Where would you go, Emma? You have nothing out there? No one. Do you even remember what it's like to sleep on concrete?" And I didn't. Not really, because he never let me forget what he saved me from. He never hit me, never raised his voice. But sometimes kindness can be a weapon too, especially when it's used to bind you instead of free you. I stopped wearing my own thoughts. They didn't fit anymore. Everything about me began to sound like him. And one night, when I stood in the mirror wearing the dress he picked, with the words he taught me to say and the smile he said men liked, I didn't recognize the girl looking back. She was clean, fed, protected, but she wasn't me. That's when I wrote it in my journal for the first time. I think I traded one kind of prison for another. He didn't need to hit me, I still bled. There were no bruises on my body, no cracked lips, no broken bones. But I bled. Oh God, I bled. Silently, invisibly, every single day. He never shouted, never called me names. He said things like, "You're too emotional, Emma. You always take things the wrong way. Why do you make everything so complicated? You should be grateful. Grateful." That word clung to me like a collar I couldn't unclasp. The worst kind of pain is the one no one believes exists. Especially when your abuser wears expensive suits, opens car doors for you, and says, "I saved her life." But what no one saw was how he erased me inch by inch. I used to love reading. Books were my shelter. Even when I slept under bridges, pages were home. But he said they were a distraction. "You don't need fairy tales anymore." He smiled. "You have me now." So I stopped reading. And I didn't even notice when that part of me started to fade. I used to sing while cleaning, humming old tunes I grew up with. It made me feel real. Until one afternoon he came home early, heard me in the kitchen and said, "That's not really your strength, is it?" He laughed. Just once, but it echoed through me for hours. And I never sang again. He rewrote me without ever touching a pen. When I cried, he offered me tissues, not comfort. When I spoke up, he looked at me like I was being dramatic. When I got quiet, he smiled. Because silence to him meant submission. I remember the day I found my old backpack in the attic. The one I carried when I was homeless. Dirty, ripped, still smelling faintly of rain and fire. Tucked inside was a photograph of me, smiling in a community shelter before I met him. Hair messy, face thin. But the girl in the picture had something I no longer recognized. Freedom. I clutched the photo to my chest and cried so hard my ribs ached. Because I realized he didn't take me off the streets to save me. He took me in, so I'd owe him forever. Love doesn't keep score. But Caleb did. He kept a running tally of every coat, every meal, every opportunity. And when I disappointed him, he brought it up like a receipt. "I found you with nothing. I gave you everything. You wouldn't even be alive without me." And for the longest time, I believed him. Until one night, I looked in the mirror and I whispered, "I'm not alive, I'm just maintained." That same night, I found a notebook, blank. And I wrote 3 words. "I want out." But getting out of a gilded cage isn't as simple as walking away, because before you can leave the room, you have to leave the lie. And the lie was this: he saved me, so I owe him. I tore that page from the notebook, burned it in the sink. Not the words, the lie. Freedom has a price, and he named it. The night I told him I wanted to leave, he didn't yell, didn't flinch, didn't even look surprised. He just sat still, sipping his wine like I'd said something as mundane as, "It might rain tomorrow." "I see," he said. Then silence. The kind that fills every inch of a room. The kind that makes you question everything you just said. "And where exactly would you go, Emma?" I looked him in the eye. "Anywhere but here." He smiled. That same small smile he used when people praised him in public. "You know," he said softly, "I always admired that about you. The part of you that still thinks you have choices." I stood. My legs shook, but my voice didn't. "I'm not your project, not your possession." He chuckled. "Of course not. You're far more valuable than that." Then he stood, walked to his desk, and opened the drawer he always kept locked. The drawer. He pulled out a folder. Thick, black, stamped with his initials in silver. Dropped it on the table between us. "Since you're leaving," he said, "I think it's time we talk about debts." My throat dried. I didn't open it. He did. Page after page of receipts, bank statements, a signed agreement, my signature, shaky and desperate from the week I moved in. I didn't remember signing it, but I had. Of course I had. It was one of those nights I hadn't eaten. When he said it was just a formality, that it was to protect me, to make me official, he flipped to the last page. There it was, a total, a number so big it made my stomach drop. He tapped it gently. "You've cost me quite a lot, Emma. Housing, food, healthcare, therapy, clothing, phone, legal fees, protection." He looked up. "I invested in you. And investments, Emma. Don't just walk away." I stepped back, the room blurred, the walls closed in. "You helped me, but I never asked you to own me." "No," he said, voice smooth. You just accepted every gift without ever reading the fine print. I picked up the folder, shoved it back toward him. I'm leaving. You can't keep me here with paperwork. That smile again. You're right, I can't force you. But the debt? He leaned closer. It follows you. And without me, who's going to protect you from what you owe? That's when I saw it. Not a man, not a savior, not a lover. A collector. Someone who'd given, not to give, but to trap. I walked out that night. No bag, no plan, just my name. And the realization that freedom has a price. And he just named it. But I wasn't paying. Not in silence, not with my life. Not again. End of part 4. In part 5, I left him, but he followed me with his power. Guess what? He didn't raise his hand. He raised his reach. And when I tried to start over, I learned he still owned everything I touched. I left him, but he followed me with his power. I thought leaving was the hard part, but surviving without him was harder. Not because I missed him, but because he made sure the world outside still belonged to him. I spent the first 2 nights in a shelter downtown, the kind where beds creak, and the air smells like old linens and whispered prayers. I didn't sleep much, kept expecting to see his car outside, kept hearing his voice in my head. You won't last 2 weeks without me. I tried applying for work, cleaning jobs, waitressing, even folding flyers for a bookstore. Every place asked for an ID, a reference, a phone number, things I didn't have anymore. Because every form of identity I had was built under Caleb's roof. My bank account? Set up by him. My phone number? Registered in his name. My resume? Written with his help. I didn't realize until now how thoroughly he had designed me to not exist without him. At one place, a receptionist asked, "Weren't you the girl with Caleb Royce?" The name hit harder than any slap. We've worked with his foundation before. He's generous. She smiled. And then she said it. It's just, we'd rather not get involved in anything complicated. Complicated. That's what I was now. A risk, a liability. Because he had made sure that being rescued by him also meant being branded. I changed cities. Took a bus to somewhere I'd never lived. Changed my hair, wore baggy clothes. Started over. Again. And for a while, it worked. I got a cleaning job at a late-night diner. Under the table, no questions asked. I rented a room in a basement, no windows. But it was mine. I started breathing again. Not deeply, but enough to feel like I still existed. Until one night, 2 weeks in, my boss pulled me aside. "Hey, Emma," someone called. "Asked about you." Didn't leave a name, just said they were making sure you were safe. I froze. What did they sound like? Calm, professional, creepy calm. I packed my things that night. Again, because now I knew. He wasn't chasing me with footsteps. He was chasing me with power. With his last name. His influence, his network. And no matter how far I ran, his shadow seemed to stretch longer than the road. That's when I realized, if I didn't find a way to expose him, I would spend the rest of my life running. I didn't want revenge. I wanted visibility. Proof. A voice. So I did the only thing I could. I went to the one place where women like me were heard. Sometimes. A legal aid office for domestic and psychological abuse victims. I walked in with trembling hands, sat across from a volunteer who looked too young to understand. Until she asked the first question. Was it physical? I shook my head. No. Emotional? I nodded. And financial, I whispered. And psychological. And calculated. And invisible. She didn't flinch. Just opened a file and said 4 words I didn't expect to hear. You're not the first. The lawyer who believed me, her name was Nora Reyes. Late 30s, sharp brown eyes. No-nonsense voice. But when she looked at me, she didn't see weakness. She saw fire that hadn't gone out yet, even if it was buried under months of ash. She didn't ask me, "Why didn't you leave sooner?" She didn't say, "Are you sure you're remembering right?" She didn't look at my clean clothes and think, "But he took care of you." She just sat down, flipped open her notebook, and said, "Tell me everything, and don't hold back. I can take it." I started from the beginning. The rain, the gas station, the umbrella. The warm home that slowly turned cold. The dresses he chose. The phone he controlled. The kindness that became chains. The debt. The contract. The fake freedom. She didn't interrupt, didn't rush. She wrote down notes, nodded when I paused, and when I got to the part about the file he showed me, she leaned forward, eyes lit with something fierce. "You saw the agreement?" I nodded. I didn't know what I was signing. I was starving. I was scared. She frowned. "He's done this before." That stopped me. "What?" "Emma," she said, "you're not the first woman he's helped only to turn it into control. I've seen this pattern before. Money, gifts, isolation, power dynamics." She opened a folder from her own drawer, pulled out a thin file. Inside, another woman, different name, different face, but same story. He made her sign over her name to a business, then left her with the taxes. She lost everything. The room started spinning. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't alone. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't powerless anymore. Nora looked at me and said, "If you're willing, we can challenge the contract. Emotional duress, fraud, coercion." "He's careful," I said. "He'll bury me in legal fees." She smiled, a small, fierce thing. "Let him try, he doesn't know me yet." The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork. Meetings, statements, late-night panic attacks followed by early morning resolve. We filed a civil suit, started the process to have the contract nullified. Nora helped me report financial abuse. We documented everything. And just like that, the hunter became the hunted. The first letter came from Caleb's lawyer. "Our client denies all claims. He states the defendant was a willing participant in a mutually beneficial arrangement." But this time, I wasn't the one trembling, because we had proof. Emails, text messages, a copy of the contract, voice recordings, little things I never knew I had saved on the cloud he forgot to clear. He underestimated me. He underestimated Nora. And most of all, he underestimated the power of a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to reclaim. And somewhere in that messy, exhausting process, I started breathing differently. Not cautiously, but like a woman taking her name back. End of part 6. In part 7, the trial was never in court. It was in me. Guess what? The real fight wasn't just legal. It was emotional. Because before I could win against him, I had to stop believing he still owned me. The trial was never in court. It was in me. The paperwork was moving forward. Court dates were being set. Nora was preparing every angle, building every argument, filling every folder. But I was breaking down. Not because I doubted the facts, not because I feared losing, but because even after everything, his voice still echoed inside my head. "You'd be dead without me. No one else would ever want you. You owe me your life." And the worst part? A small part of me still believed him. I remember sitting on the floor of the tiny room I now rented, holding the only thing I had left from that time. A cheap black scarf, the one he gave me on my first night in his house. It wasn't expensive, but it had kept me warm. It had made me feel visible. And now it made me feel sick. That's when I realized. This wasn't just about Caleb, this was about me. Because no matter how many lawyers I had, how many cases we filed, or how loud the truth became, none of it would matter if I still saw myself through his eyes. Nora noticed. One afternoon, after a long meeting, she sat beside me and said, "You're strong, Emma, but you're still carrying his words like chains." I looked down. What if... Deep down, I let it happen. What if I wanted to be owned just so I wouldn't be alone? She didn't flinch. "You didn't let it happen. You survived it. That's not weakness, that's endurance." And slowly, I started to believe her. I went back to things I used to love. Picked up a book again, first time in months. I couldn't read more than 2 pages before crying, but I kept reading. I played music quietly, softly, until I dared to hum along. And one night, I stood in front of the mirror and forced myself to say, "I am not his, I was never his, I am mine." The court date came closer. I was scared, but I wasn't hollow anymore. Because now, when I heard his name, I didn't flinch. I got angry. And then I got ready. A week before the hearing, I got an email. Anonymous sender, no subject line. Inside, a voice recording. It was Caleb. "She's unstable. She's a manipulator. She's using me for publicity. No court will believe a girl who used to sleep on the streets." I played it 3 times, not to cry, but to feel the fire again. I forwarded it to Nora. "Thanks," she replied. "That's going to look really good, then, when we play it in front of the judge." But what she didn't know was what it did for me. Because that voice, the one that used to define me, had finally lost its power. He could smear me. He could threaten me. He could even win on paper. But he would never again own the girl I was rebuilding. This wasn't about debt anymore, or legal documents, or who signed what. It was about reclaiming myself. The courtroom was cold, but I didn't shake. The courtroom was nothing like I imagined. No shouting, no drama, no teary confessions. Just 4 walls, gray carpet, and the kind of silence that made every chair squeak sound like a scream. Caleb was already there when I walked in. Pressed suit, perfect tie. Hair slicked back like he hadn't lost a minute of sleep. He looked at me only once. No smirk, no fear, just calculation. Like he was reading me, measuring what kind of Emma I had chosen to bring that day. He expected the scared one, the grateful one, the girl who whispered apologies and avoided eye contact. But I didn't flinch. I met his gaze and held it long enough to watch him blink first. Nora stood beside me, strong, still, a wall I could lean on. She whispered, "He doesn't control the room anymore, you do." And I believed her. For the first time ever, I believed someone more than I had ever believed him. The proceedings began. His lawyer spoke first. Long monologues about generosity. Mr. Royce has always had a philanthropic heart. He took her in when she had nothing. She signed all agreements willingly. I watched as they painted me as a broken, needy case who was now, conveniently, biting the hand that fed her. When it was Nora's turn, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She just placed the recording on the table and played it. Caleb's voice filled the room. "She's unstable. She's a manipulator. She used me for publicity." And the room changed. You could feel it. The atmosphere shifted. Even the judge leaned forward. And in that moment, Caleb finally looked nervous. Then, said calmly, "Emma, would you like to speak?" My heart hammered, my knees wanted to bend. But I stood. Because this moment, Asang, was mine. I took a breath. I didn't come here to win money. I didn't come here to ruin a man. I came here to get my name back. He didn't save me. He selected me, groomed me, built a system where I couldn't breathe without asking permission. He made sure every kindness came with a chain and every debt had a leash. I looked right at Caleb. I thought I owed him my life, but what I owed myself was freedom. No one clapped, no gasps, no dramatic music, just silence. But this silence was finally mine. When I sat down, Nora reached over and squeezed my hand. "You did it," she whispered. "Whether we win or not, he doesn't own the story anymore." The judge said they'd review everything. A decision would come soon. But I didn't need the gavel to fall to know I'd already won. Because I stood in front of the man who tried to rewrite me and spoke the version of myself he could never erase. That night, I didn't cry. I packed my bag, went home, stared at myself in the mirror. And for the first time in years, I didn't see a girl who owed anyone anything. I saw a survivor, a woman, a warrior. He lost the case, but I gained my voice. The judgment came 2 weeks later. I was sitting in the tiny cafe I'd started working at part-time, folding napkins, wiping down a table, just trying to live. Nora called. She didn't say much. "It's over." "Nakambar," she said. "You won." And that was it. No fireworks, no grand scene. Just a 3-word sentence that felt like a key turning in the lock of a prison I didn't know I was still standing in. The court declared the contract void due to coercion and imbalance of power. He was ordered to pay restitution and barred from contacting me again. But honestly, I didn't care about the money, because money couldn't give me back what he took. But something else did. My voice. After the call, I stepped outside. The sun hit my skin in a way it hadn't in a long time. Warm, welcoming, unjudging. I tilted my face up to it and whispered, "I'm still here." I started writing again. Not in fear, not in secret, but in journals filled with truth, not just about him, but about me. The girl I used to be, the woman I was becoming, the space between. I began volunteering at the same legal aid center where I met Nora. Once a week, 1 hour. Just sitting beside women who walked in with their heads down, their hearts shattered, and their stories clenched tight behind their teeth. I didn't always give advice. Most times I just said, "I believe you," and their shoulders would fall, as if those 3 words had just lifted the entire world off their backs. I kept the scarf, the black one from that first night, but not as a reminder of him, as a reminder of me, of how far I've come, of how close I came to disappearing completely. I framed the court letter, not because of the win, but because it was proof. Proof that no matter how quiet your pain is, if you speak, someone will eventually listen. Caleb, I haven't heard from him since. Rumors say he's moved on to someone else, that his businesses are being reviewed. I don't follow it, because looking back is something I only do to see how far I've walked. One day I got a letter from a girl, 21, still in a shelter. She wrote, "They told me my story was like yours, and for the first time I didn't feel disgusting. I felt human. Thank you." That letter meant more than any judgment, because that's what voice does. It doesn't just free you. It lights the path for others. Now, when people ask me what happened to me, I don't say, "He saved me." I say, "He underestimated me, and I found myself." End of part 9. In part 10, I used to be grateful to him. Now I'm grateful to me. Guess what? The greatest healing wasn't in justice, but in forgiveness. Not for him, but for the girl I once was, who thought she wasn't worth saving. I used to be grateful to him. Now I'm grateful to me. They say healing comes in waves. Mine came in whispers. Not loud, not sudden, Just quiet moments where the shame no longer stuck to my skin and his name stopped echoing in my chest. I no longer had nightmares. Instead, I had dreams of bookstores, of open windows, of songs I used to hum without fear that someone would call me too loud. There was a time when I used to say, "He saved me." I used those words like a shield to keep myself from seeing the truth. But now when I hear them, I flinch. Because the truth is, I saved me. I saved myself every time I stood up from the floor, every time I looked at him and stayed silent, so I could survive another day. Every time I told myself, it's not always going to be like this. And I was right. Today, I live in a small apartment with a plant I haven't killed yet. I work at a community center, helping women find jobs, write resumes, and more importantly, find their names again. Because so many of them have forgotten who they were before someone else told them who to be. I don't tell them my full story unless they ask. But when they do, I don't speak with shame. I speak with power. I speak with love for the girl I used to be. The one who stood in the rain, soaking wet and invisible, and still had enough fight left to follow a stranger into the unknown. That girl? I don't resent her anymore. I love her. She kept me alive. Forgiveness didn't come easy. I didn't forgive Caleb. He doesn't deserve it. But I forgave the part of me that stayed too long, that doubted herself, that mistook control for care. I forgave her because she was doing the best she could with the little she had. And now? Now I have more. Not things, not money, but self-worth. Boundaries. A voice that doesn't shake. One afternoon, I passed by the gas station, the one where it all started. I stood under that same awning, rain falling in thin lines around me. But this time I wasn't cold, I wasn't hungry. I wasn't looking for rescue. I was looking back not with regret, but with grace. Because everything he tried to use against me, I used to build something better. I used to be grateful to him for saving me from the streets. Now I'm grateful to me for saving myself from him. Some people leave scars, others leave lessons. Burn and reborn stories that break you, then rebuild you.